the science has shown that in orgasm, our pain comes down to zero. Like it's literally like we have entered heaven. So to me, it's an act of worship. It's an act of total access point to God. And for women to forfeit that because we've believed this idea that sex is for men and we're just here for the cuddle drives me nuts.
Welcome, bienvenue, bonjour to the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast. For women who desire to awaken their heartfelt desires, trust themselves fully, and connect with their soul's purpose through beauty. On y va. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast. This is Marino, and are you ready? Are you ready to have potentially one of the most important conversations of your life? The guest that I want to share with you today is someone that I admire, I respect. I share in the beginning of our interview together that I feel she has really embodied this beautiful level of innocence and edge. So I want to share with you her professional bio and then take a moment to share with you part of this heartfelt conversation and why I feel it's so important for women to gift themselves permission to have this level of conversation. I want to introduce you to Jackie Lacroix. She's the head of Libéré, a media and coaching organization that focuses on delivering information about body, beauty, and relationships to women all over the world. Jackie is a model, a writer, a women's coach, and she frequently speaks at women's conferences and young adult events. She has a passion for seeing young women flourish in lifestyle, health, vitality, and she has a gorgeous knack for handling these topics in a way that is both edgy and accessible. Jackie graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Johns Hopkins University. She earned a dual degree in scientific and medical writing and French literature and holds her master's degree in communication, culture, and technology from Georgetown University. Talk about a bombshell. This gorgeous woman and I have such a powerful conversation about sex and spirituality. I invite you to deeply listen to the opportunity that's here, no matter what your current relationship is with sex and spirituality. Jackie and I take this to a level that I imagine you have never explored before. Jackie's vulnerability on this podcast, her insight, her power, her just expression of femininity is so incredibly inspiring. In the beginning of the podcast, she shares the top 2 things that have driven her crazy around this topic and why it is she chose to step into this perhaps path unknown for so many women. So enjoy this podcast. Please tag Jackie and I on social. Let us know what you feel about this and what it is that opens up inside of you. And really, truly, gift yourself the opportunity to consider what's available for you when you explore sex and spirituality. Enjoy the show. Hello, bonjour, and welcome to the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast. All right. I want to introduce you to somebody today that when I close my eyes and I think about her, she is like equal parts innocence and edge in a way that I don't know a lot of people can embody. She has this stunning sensuality about her and a depth of spirituality. I have known this woman for years, could talk about her all day. And my intention is to just move straight in, because I know Spirit is going to pop us both open inside of some really spicy conversations today. So, Jackie, welcome to the Beautiful Soul-Led Life podcast.
Tara, thank you so much for that. It is such an honor and a joy to be here. I know I've told you before, you're like a second mother to me, and you have walked with me through so many extraordinary transitions into remembering who I am. So thank you for that. That means the world.
Well, it's really funny because right before I pressed record, I did close my eyes and like, okay, God, like, how do I feel this woman? And it's so true. Like the innocence and the edge, right? The sensuality and the spirituality. It's not just what you stand for. It really is what you vibrate and what you emit from you, which, you've done so much in your life. You have a stunning business, you know, all of these things. But what I find, and I'd love for us just to fall right into this together, is none of our business plans matter if we're not congruent and in alignment with the embodiment of what we're
Amen.
teaching.
Yes.
So I would love to hear from you, just whatever's on your heart to express of like where inside you gifted yourself permission to talk about spirituality and sexuality in the way that you do.
Oh my gosh. I would love to. You know, Tara, would you believe me if I said that God told me to?
I
You probably
absolutely would.
would. You would. Yeah, you would. For quite a long time, I've been more comfortable with the conversation around sex than probably many people. And my personal faith, my personal spirituality goes way back and very deep as well. But it's another level to discuss it publicly, quite frankly, right? It's a conversation that a lot of women have kind of with their girlfriends and over wine or over coffee or whatever, maybe some jokes or some euphemisms. But I was running my business primarily around wellness, body image, all of those kinds of topics, which were a little more kind of kosher, if you will.
Mhm.
And I remember when everything ground to a halt, like no more money was coming in, the clients weren't, they were happy, but like no one was really getting traction.
Yeah.
And I was praying so much and I was like, "What are you doing, God? Like I'm doing the thing?" And I remember so clearly hearing in my spirit, "I'm going to make everything stop working until you start teaching about sex." I was like, "Okay."
I just want to pause there for so many reasons. Like, first of all, I love that you said, "Would you believe me if I said God told me to?" Everyone listening, you might be like, right? And then the other part's like, well, yeah, of course, of
Yeah.
course. What you just said there, I want everyone to hear, and I'm listening to this deeply inside of myself as well. How interesting is it how stuff stops working when
Yes.
God is really like over here, especially the stuff that was working so
I
well. That was,
know.
you're like, what am I doing wrong? What
Yeah.
over here? So your over here was like sex.
Yes.
Start talking
100%.
about sex. And what was
Yeah.
your response inside?
I mean, I don't wanna say I didn't have much of a choice, but I kinda didn't have much of a choice, right? I needed to generate cash flow. And do you know how when there's something that you see in the marketplace or in the world, and you see someone else doing it, and it's not that, we're gonna say they're doing it right or they're doing it wrong, but you just feel you could add an extra level of dimension to the conversation, right? So, I remember seeing people teaching on intimacy and just feeling like that's not the full picture that I believe supports women into total empowerment and pleasure in this area. And so it was in part a business like, okay, if that's if this is what needs to change to keep cash flow coming in, then this is what needs to change. And there was kind of this like a holy rage, a holy anger around seeing what I felt was insufficient information that was keeping women in bondage. I mean, what a funny word to use in a sex conversation, but like they were not experiencing the fullness of life that I believed and knew is available to women in this area. And so it was both elements at the same time where I thought, I'm just going to go for it. And I'm sure I'm going to be judged. And I absolutely was. And I'm sure I still am. But it had reached a tipping point when I no longer cared enough to allow that to stop me. And I think wanting women to be free in that area was probably even more powerful of a driver than wanting to get my business back in the flow.
Mm. I mean, when you look at this and when we all feel, I'll speak for myself, like the way that I was taught around these two topics is that they are opposite ends of the spectrum. Like,
Yep,
if we even can consider, which I know many of us have, that money and spirituality has felt like, or we've been taught that this is separate. I mean, you talk about sex and spirituality, and I feel like we've been taught that this is like light years
totally.
away. So
Yes.
you gifted yourself permission. You heard inside there was a logical reason of like, okay, I'm here to create a business. I'm here to create cash flow. This is the response I'm getting. I have
Yep.
to follow
Yep.
this, right? We know we all have choice, but right, you have to
Totally.
follow this. And then that additional of, all right, and even what's out there, I feel super limited. So I feel a
Mhm.
level of confidence that I can add to the conversation, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So then, like that, that piece inside that allows you to move above and beyond any shame of really having this conversation. Like, what was that like for you?
Yeah. I think, you know, I'm just going to say it bluntly. I was so convinced that I was right, Tara. I was so convinced that there was not that I could get it perfect at all, not by any means, but that there was such a ferocity in the message itself that I kind of just needed to get out of the way of it. And my ego would have been in the way. And it certainly was a temptation to think, oh my gosh, especially because I used to work almost exclusively with women from the Christian faith.
Mm-hmm.
But I was so convinced, even from scripture, like my own personal understandings of that and my relationship with God in this area, that if there was any shaming around sex, it was not from God, put simply. And so for me, I didn't have any unpacking to do anymore. I had previously
Mm-hmm.
around shame around sex. It was more just this is culturally shamed. It's culturally misunderstood as something that is divorced from the spiritual. But I knew that that was not the case. And I knew if I could just kind of pull back the curtain for women to see what I had come to see, God would
Mm-hmm.
do the rest.
Okay, so let's go there. Like, what did you see when you were looking at what was out there and you were like, okay, this isn't even the tip of the iceberg as far as the truth around intimacy, the truth around pleasure, this unraveling of any kind of bondage. Like, what is that you see and that you teach?
Yes, totally. So the two conversations that frustrate the living daylights out of me out there are the idea that for a woman to enjoy sex, the man has to change. That's conversation one, is that it's not going to be possible for her to have a better experience in this area unless he is basically a different man. Unless he's willing to change as a lover, unless he's willing to figure her out, unless he's willing to blah, blah, blah. And while I am all for men who want to show up in the bedroom in a beautiful service and pleasure oriented way for women, that's such a disempowering stance.
Mm,
You know, if
yeah,
our true
yeah.
desire is I want as a woman to experience sex and intimacy at a higher level, I guess I hope he comes through for me so I can, right? It's just, it's such a, it's not blame necessarily, but it's a removal of our own ability to be in direct power with God in this area. It's when I teach it, I often show that, you know, it's as though we felt like God gave sex to men and then we kind of were given as like, you know, the party favor to enjoy it with. And we've lost this divine direct connection of a birthright to enjoy sex as part of our God design as women. So that's a huge part of the conversation that I found very annoying. And
Let's
coupled with it, yeah, you want to pause on that?
hold on. Yeah, yeah, because this is so freaking good, Jackie. This is so
It's
good.
huge.
It's so huge. I mean, just even to feel into the bigger context of how often we say that we cannot
Yeah,
unless someone else XYZ. And to
precisely.
bring this into the conversation of the bedroom and to really allow women to sit with that for a minute. Like, are you claiming your divine right to enjoy sex? Regardless of how he's showing up, are you feeling that in your body? I mean, even that sensation changes things inside. This is huge. I love this. I love, love, love this so much. Okay, I'm ready for number two. Okay, tell me.
Number two is similar in that it's this belief that women have to feel not just an emotional connection, but sometimes it's almost described as an emotional perfection in order to enjoy sex, and that that's what we're really showing up for. We've been so long culturally trained that they want sex, we want communication, we want closeness, we want emotional intimacy. And while again, that's a beautiful part of a relationship, it's almost like women have been trained culturally to become more comfortable with sex by seeing ourselves, especially anybody who seems themselves as a good girl, who was raised to be a good girl, who still feels like a good girl,
Mhm.
that we like sex because we feel close to him when we have sex, right? Versus a true claiming of even our anatomy and declaring that it's yes, that's beautiful, but it's pleasure in our body and it's climax and it's that release that is so good for us, that is medically, scientifically, it's designed to be so good. And if we look at our anatomy, we can't get away, even to pull it back into the spiritual, from the reality that that was placed in our body only for pleasure. So it's this idea that either sex is kind of his responsibility or sex is for us to feel emotionally close, and we require to basically have a perfect relationship before we feel like bothering to physically connect so that he's then satisfied. And instead looking just, I like to say, like, pack him a picnic basket and just send him on his way for a little bit, and let's just look at ourselves as a sexual woman. We're built for this act, and we're built to delight in it and to enjoy it. And then the beauty of that, just like you were just saying, is that when we start to unpack any resistance we have toward that, we get to look into conversations that are well beyond sex around, are we giving ourselves permission to go all the way? Are we willing to lose control and surrender to something God created? Are we like available to show up for ourselves and go all in and to speak up for what we do want? Like, there's so much more that comes into sex. And that's one of the reasons I love the topic so much.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay. So this second one, I want to reflect this back to you because this is how I was feeling it when you were sharing it. In the way that I hear you describing it, it's not that the emotional connection isn't important and that we don't love that. And it's not that
Correct.
it's extraordinary. It is.
Yep.
It's that prioritizing that above and beyond the pleasure as almost like an excuse or a reason and not allowing the prioritization of pleasure to be
Yes.
admitted, to be a forefront, to be like anchored and claimed.
Yes.
Is that
100%. Yes, like women hiding behind the idea that we need sex for emotional closeness rather than stepping into the power of we're also here for our physical pleasure too, and that's not a
yes?
bad or wrong thing.
So I remember, I think everyone listening, if you're resonating with this, I'm going to encourage you to consider this if it's true for you, because I know it's true for you and I, Jackie. Like, I love sex. I
Yes.
love sex. And
I do too.
I can remember like the first time I admitted that out loud.
Yeah.
It was that overcoming even of that little girl inside of like, like, what you fill in the blank. That feeling inside of like, oh my gosh, I must be bad. I must be wrong. I must need
Yeah.
to wrap it around something else.
Mm.
But the truth is, like, I love sex. And one of my first huge spiritual experiences came after an incredible orgasm. Like, I
100%.
astral projected out of my body and I didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
Like this closeness of admitting, like you're saying, the physical release, the joy of it, the immersion and gift of the physical world experience. Like it's divine,
100% it
actually.
is. Yeah.
Oh, this is so good.
I know. And it's so important because even just to look at all of the medical and scientific benefits, like not just I love sex, but I love orgasm, right? And this is
Yeah.
it's something that so many women struggle with, that so many women have been told, you may as well just give up. It's really rare. Female orgasm, not a thing, not a priority. If you get lucky, maybe once. But so many women just assume that they're not going to experience it. And just like you said, when we allow ourselves to learn our bodies and be okay with that, to love our bodies and be okay with that, to speak up about what we'd like him to do to our bodies and be okay with that, right? There's so many layers of permission for pleasure in this. Then orgasm itself is, especially for people who have some kind of faith where they're thinking there's a heaven, there's an afterlife, there's a perfection or something. The science has shown that in orgasm, our pain comes down to zero. Like, it's literally like we have entered heaven. So to me, it's an act of worship. It's an act of total access point to God. And for women to forfeit that because we've believed this idea that sex is for men and we're just here for the cuddle drives me nuts, honestly. There's so much more available.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Jackie, this is so freaking good. So good. I mean, just sitting here with you inside of this conversation. Oh, I just want to slow down for a minute because there is so much here to honor and to celebrate. And the
Mm,
physicality of what you're bringing forward, in my scientific research, the breath actually stops
yes.
during orgasm. And the French word for orgasm is petite mort, which means
Yeah.
little death, little death. And so, in this moment of divine surrender, which is literally what happens, like we completely give up control.
Yep.
Like it's such an opportunity for us, then, the more we allow that as a continuation, just exactly like what you're saying, for the way that we are with life, like letting life
Exactly.
move through us, surrendering to that divine control, allowing that, what you're saying, like that feeling for us to be comfortable with the no pain, for it to feel that good. I have a question coming up for you that I don't know. I haven't done a lot of research on this, but I have some clients who have shared with me, and this is my own thought on it. I don't know if you might know more about it. That when they've allowed themselves to orgasm, they actually get really bad headaches, like a really bad
Interesting.
migraine. And I have a few
Huh.
clients who've
Hmm.
experienced it. Now, again, I don't know a lot of science behind it. I don't know if it's a rush of hormone. This is my sense
Yep.
as not a scientist or a doctor.
Yep.
My sense is that it's probably a rush of those hormones, as well
Mhm.
as potentially a resistance to
Interesting.
fully letting go. Because so many of us are really addicted to pain. So many of
Yes.
us have confused that, no pain, no gain, the pain and the pleasure as one, instead of this birthright.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's something scientific, medical around hormones, et cetera. I'm
Yeah.
not enough of an expert to say, but I find a lot of women, yes, there's a resistance on so many levels, which I'll get to in a second, but there's also, I think, a lot of women who maybe think they're having an orgasm, and it's not like I don't wanna be there and determine it with them, but
Yeah.
might not even be letting themselves go all the way.
Yeah.
And in the same way that if you try to hold back a sneeze or a yawn, that your body wants to have a release and you're like, "No, no,
Yeah.
no, 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 not right now."
Yes.
That stifling is very painful. And
Yeah.
so, I'm not them, I'm not quite sure, but I would wonder if that's part of it because something that I love about orgasm is the ability it gives us to see where our resistance is, right? Like, and to do that, we have to slow down and see, okay, as I'm allowing the sensations in my body to build and to reach a point where I like, figuratively like throw off the mask and just lose control and make whatever sound and whatever facial expression, etc. And I don't judge myself as I'm doing that so that I can allow that release to come to completion. What are the thoughts that are perhaps in my mind that are preventing that build?
Mm.
Am I insecure around my body? Am I holding resentment toward him? Do I feel safe in the situation? Was he looking at another woman? Am I thinking that this is probably bad? I have had a lot of clients who previously felt they had to tap into kind of a bad girl identity to allow themselves to have an orgasm. And so we
Mm.
kind of get to figure out where are the thoughts that are creating the sticking points that are
Mhm.
preventing your body from being able to release because there's so much packed into sex, and for so many women even that act of slowing down their thoughts as it's coming is difficult and maybe even scary because, of course, this is also an area of huge trauma, right? Cultural trauma, unique individual trauma. Like there's a lot of fear and shutdown in this area. So if you think of a woman's natural sexual design as being something that can open and receive at the deepest levels and then bring forth life and pleasure in the world through that, then of course the opposite would be to shut down, close off, tighten up, hide, back away, all of the closing, right? So it's totally understandable why so many women are a little intimidated to allow themselves to investigate their thoughts and their feelings and the sensations in their body around this. But if we can allow ourselves to slowly unfurl into that pleasure, we can actually see where those foggy seeming stuck points have been hiding.
Oh, I love this so much. And I mean, if we look at like the core of what we're seeking inside of everything, it's liberation. right? It's
Yes.
freedom.
Oh,
It's the awareness and the remembering that we're free.
yes.
So utilizing, and when I say utilizing, I don't mean like using in a bad way, like utilizing the experience of sex as a deeper awakening of
Totally.
that truth. And for me, I find this fascinating. I'd love your take on this as well. You know that I am always talking about increasing our capacity to receive. Like that's why
Hmm.
I'm here. That's what I feel like is our, our opportunities to continue the more please, more please. So I love, 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 love. And this was actually a big deal for me. I love stretching into the more please from an orgasmic perspective.
Yes.
Now, I even witnessing myself inside of myself, judging what I'm about to say a little bit because of some of the reflection I've heard in that, oh,
Mm.
if I had a husband like that, right?
Yep.
Just what you said in the beginning, like if I had, like my husband loves to please me. There is nothing in this world I think that he loves more than to please me. And it has been such a growth opportunity for me in the bedroom to let go of not just the one orgasm, but I mean, I'm talking three, four, five, six,
Yeah.
sometimes seven.
Absolutely.
And, not counting. Like I'm like, and I
It's
can
fun.
watch myself at times be like, babe. And he's like, really? Not more, please? I'm like, like to inside of ourselves to surrender again and again to, oh my gosh, it's okay for more. It's okay to increase our capacity to receive. And how fascinating is it that we can do that as women? We do have that capacity to like, oh my gosh, more. So I love like kind of how you feel about that and how you played with that inside of this like just awareness and recognition that women were built this way and
Yes.
how it's like extraordinary and the ways that we stop ourselves from like, oh, that's enough, that's enough, that's enough,
I totally know. And I love this so much. And I think there's nothing wrong with counting. Like, go for your own next record, right? How many can you handle?
Oh, seriously, it's like, wait, is this
Yeah.
okay?
And do I have anything else I need to do right now? Yeah, 100%. Um, I think it goes back to this. Well, first, just like the anatomical design, right? Sexually, women can have orgasm after orgasm after orgasm after orgasm, multiple simultaneous with him. Like, we're sexually, the female body is like a Ferrari. We're just
Yeah.
so
Wait, quote. Somebody needs to quote that. The female body is like a Ferrari. We're writing this one down.
100%. It really is. There's such complexity and power, and
Mhm.
yet how few have actually learned to drive it, right? Like such untapped potential in this exquisite machine that we have been told is the source of like sinfulness and temptation and just be a good girl and don't do that, right? So if you can take that ability where we can have, heaven only knows how many orgasms in the time that he's preparing to reload for his number two, and then see that as something that God chose to give to women and then say, okay. And again, to each their own beliefs. If you don't believe in God, that's totally cool. But if there's some higher power or design that's within me that has allowed me to experience literally having no cap on my ability to receive, then what does that look like in the rest of my life and how good I can let it get? And let's take one more step higher, right? So there's me, there's God, and then how good can I allow a man to be to me, even, right? So receiving in total and then receiving from God, receiving from the masculine, like how much can we let in becomes the question. And we don't have to not only feel any guilt, but just this joy of this is my design. Like this is me living into being a woman on earth, and you're welcome. This is a blessing to me. It's a blessing to you. It's a blessing and energy to everyone who experiences us like this.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I mean, it's like you're welcome and thank you.
100%.
Like all of it simultaneously.
Yep.
This expression, it's so true. And it does affect every single area of our
Mhm.
lives. So when you're starting to have these conversations with a woman, and again, like you said, everyone's going to have their unique experience. They're going to come to the table with whatever, right? Whatever story, whatever, all of those things. It's not going to be the same, I'm sure, for everybody. But still, how do you even broach this conversation with a woman? Say she's aware that she's limiting her sexual expression, her sexual experience, and already has an awareness inside of like, and I know it's affecting every area of my life. How do you start the conversation with her?
Absolutely. First, honestly, I congratulate her. I thank her for being willing to step into this space and already have the awareness, the self awareness, and the courage to tread this kind of water, right? Like this kind of territory is a space that so many, while having children and, reproducing, never actually discuss or honor at all. So, bravo is first. And then through the course of the conversation with her, usually can already start to pick up where some of the pain lies, right? So, some women will come to me and they don't even want to use the word sex. They'll just say, "Can we talk about that thing that you teach on?" And it takes me a little bit of like, talk about a couple things. Which thing are you talking about? So then I'm thinking, okay, this shame probably comes from mom, right? If we
Mhm.
can't even use the word, there's probably maybe some church or some kind of spiritual sense of evil around this. But I want to hear as much of her story as she's willing and comfortable to share, right? So
Mhm.
one of my tenets and philosophies in business, and especially in this area, is only if it feels good to you, right? So much trauma in this area has come from women being pushed to do things or feeling obligated to do things sexually that they don't want to do. So,
Mhm.
my first priority is helping her understand and know that she is 100% safe with me. And if she wants to just sit here in silence and cry for an hour, that's okay. Right? We don't have to talk about anything. She doesn't have to share anything. We don't have to make any kind of progress. She's under no obligation to please me. Then I do want to hear the story when she's ready so that I can figure out where the core beliefs are probably hiding. Is it around God? Is it from some kind of mistreatment from men? Is it something her sister went through? Is the way her
Mhm.
dad treated her mom? All of the conditioning from childhood
Mhm.
around this topic. And usually mixed in with sex are your body, beauty, your relationships with men, your identity as a woman, and your understanding of God. Those are kind of the subtopics under sex. And then something I've actually just had come to me in the last year or two is the idea of sexual archetypes and sexual dark types is what I've been calling them. And
Mhm.
this is a framework to allow women to see what they've been calling themselves subconsciously or maybe have been called in real life. And it's so interesting that you were saying earlier, you know, you were about to say something and you're like, I would feel like a fill in the blank, right? And we have those blanks. We have whore, we have slut, we have witch, we have bad girl, we have all of these ways that we've either been judged or judged ourselves for any kind of longing for sex or enjoyment of sex. And so I help them see where they may have some of those dark type connections to sex hiding. And
Mhm.
then the archetypes are really where we get to de-demonize and re-divinize female
Oh.
sexuality. So looking at how is this holy? How is this connected to, like, if you're a Christian, the birth of Christ? How is the, and if not, like, where can we actually see the glory of the design of female sexuality and help ourselves expand into the fullest expression of it by stepping into those identities and stepping away from all of the darker associations that we've shamed it with.
Oh my gosh, Jackie. Oh my gosh. I've known you for a really long time, and I've always appreciated what you've done in the world. But to be able to sit down and slow down together and really hear what you're doing in the world is, I'm in awe. I'm in
Mm.
awe and such gratitude for, I know you said you didn't have a choice, but you did, and we all do, for the courage to have these kind of conversations because it is an untapped power that we misunderstand. You know, and when I say power, I'm not talking about a power struggle. I'm talking about a real source of divinity inside. So, as you do this with women, what are some of maybe kind of the surprising things that they start to experience?
So many orgasms, Tara, so many orgasms. I would say something that has always shocked them and shocked me as well is the speed at which they're able to unravel the thoughts and beliefs they have had previously. And while you would think, and sometimes it can take a while to unravel trauma, and I hate to even call all of this trauma. It's really misconceptions and misbeliefs, right? Trauma is really for heavy hitting counselors who can handle that kind of stuff. I'm really helping them rework misunderstandings. Sometimes it takes a while, but usually by the time they come to me, because one of the other ways I work is I won't it just doesn't work when a man tries to drag his wife to me and say, "Please make her better," like that's the definition of being pushed to do something sexually she doesn't want to do. So, when a woman raises her hand and says, "I know there's more for me in this area," she's usually quite ready, and that means the thoughts are gonna change very quickly, which means the results, and what I mean by results is feeling suddenly confident walking around nude when previously she always wanted the lights off or to be covered. Letting him please her instead of saying, "No, no, no, it's okay, I'm good. You came, we don't have time. I'm gonna get back to the kids. I think they need me." Whatever, right? All of these things she used to do maybe for decades, suddenly she finds herself able to change an experience and allow a new experience really rapidly, and I have to say it kinda blows my mind too, but I think so much of the female sexual experience, it's almost like because our body is so capable in this area, our mind then becomes what blocks it. So if
Yeah.
we can just allow our mind to be unblocked, the body's like, "Thank you, I've been waiting."
Yes. Yes. I mean, that's what I was going to say and what I was feeling when you were saying this because it's so natural.
Yes.
That once that letting go of the shit in the mind of what it
Yep,
is not,
yep.
then I can see how, yeah, well, then this external expression and experience could happen quite quickly because it is a natural experience
Yeah,
and expression. It's like
100%.
the energy that it takes for all of us to hold back the
Ugh,
natural flow of pleasure, the natural flow of life, the natural flow of the divine and divinity, like the amount of pressure and energy it takes to hold it back. Like once we let go, like what else is happening to these women? They might find themselves walking around naked and not, like enjoying it, right? Not being ashamed
yep.
anymore in the bedroom, asking for more, allowing the pleasure. I also imagine that it spills over like into everything.
100%. Their confidence, I think, is one of the biggest things that takes off, and
Mm,
it leads to a very grounded, understandably, right? Because as you know and teach, this is a very central core part of the female body. So the degree and the placement of true personal power that comes from owning and embodying and feeling a mastery over this part of yourself where you're not constricting, you're opening and surrendering, but you don't feel like you're weak or out of your own authority or alignment in so doing, it starts to then show up in the way they do business. It starts to show up in the way they have conversations and the way they set boundaries and the way they even go before God if they have some kind of faith and ask for their next level and expect and anticipate and allow it because
mm,
it's like their whole identity has almost been redeemed, right? So many women come to earth and almost from the jump are told that you're the problem, right? Your sexuality, your beauty, your attractiveness, you're the problem, right? And so when we unravel that and we actually realize, well, men are very important, don't get me wrong, but we're like a big part of the solution here, actually. There's this sense of reclaiming our worth that comes over these women. And the coolest thing, Tara, is that they never lose it, right? So in the
mm,
beginning, when I started this work like 8 years ago now, women would say, "Can you save my marriage? Can you save my relationship?" And I used to be like, "Well, a better sex life tends to help, but I can't make any promises." And yet, what I've actually noticed over this almost decade is that some of the marriages have ended, but each woman has come out in this aligned, peaceful power that
mm,
she never loses again. And
mm.
that then shows up in wherever she's called to next. And that I think is the most beautiful thing to witness.
Ah, I love this because that unlocking is timeless, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
That
Yeah.
visibility of self. Like once we allow ourselves to feel that visibility and worthiness, like you're saying, that I desire this, this is okay, I can claim this, I can embody this, I see myself this way, that never
Yes.
goes away.
Never.
Never.
It's an incredible gift.
Ah, all right. So I have a big question for you, like a personal one for you. But
Please.
before I do that, is there anything else that you feel in your heart that you want to share right now around this topic, around this message, around the necessity for those women that are ready? Like you said, women come to you when they're ready. So this isn't a
Mm.
force, it isn't a push, there's no obligation. But women who are feeling that natural necessity inside of, hold on, something inside of me is awakening as I'm listening to this conversation.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say?
I think what's been on my heart since you said it at the opening of this call was the innocence and the edge, right? And first, I so appreciate that you reflect that. But that's really, I think, what's available for all women. And I think we feel this need to pick, and
Yeah.
especially in this area where it's like, am I the good girl and I'm untainted and I'm, clean and whatever other adjectives we've been given that we need to measure up to? Or, and many women are told that they need to use these kinds of things to manipulate, to get a man, to keep a man, to, whatever, to make him regret leaving, whatever it is. The seductress, the sex kitten, the like all these kinds of things that we might call it edgy, or we might actually see edge as a power in a very masculine form, right? So a lot of women who come to me, they want to be the good girl and they're very much in a masculine sense of strength, right? So there's this sense of, I know that I'm not just going to be this innocent little baby girl who finally grew up. I know there's like this powerful source of I can do it power. And so I'm going to step into the masculine. And that's what's going to make me the true modern empowered woman. And over here are these inappropriate, seductress types or whatever who we're going to judge and shame and secretly be jealous of, but not, the whole thing. And the invitation is to recognize that, again, this is my faith, so you can understand this however anybody wants to. But if God designed the female body, and again, it doesn't always work this way in the world, I know, but the core design is that one of my friends said, we're the portal for souls, right? Our body, through the act of sex, among other helpful things, right, brings forth human beings who are both fully animal, if you will, human, and a soul. And so, like, it's literally this act, which is already the merger of the spiritual and the sexual. And so, any urge in us to say, I have to push away that edge of my sexual femininity because it doesn't feel safe like masculine closed off strength does. And it doesn't feel innocent and good girl. I could put my cardigan on and go to church and not be judged, is a lie, is what I want to say. And again, to each their own with what they want to believe, but it's just not a complete picture. And so I see women feeling like they have to pick. And my word to you is you don't have to choose, because the divine feminine is all of it, right? She's power and she's grace and she's the purity and innocence of incredible divinity. And she is sexual and earthly and like mama bear, all of these beautiful things. So there's an opportunity while we're here on earth to choose to step into the fullest feminine design, understanding that that means we will be judged and misunderstood. But the only other option is to forfeit that opportunity for ourselves. And that is what I would recommend that no woman allow herself to do with the time we have on earth.
I just want to be with that, with you and with everyone here. You know, that melting into the innocence and melting into the edge and claiming all of it. Claiming all of
100%.
it. So good. So, so good. Thank you.
It's an honor. And you were pointing out earlier, I did have a choice and I still have a choice. And there's always a temptation to shy away from this topic and talk about easier things. And the calling is still there, and I'm sure it always will be. And there are so many women who need just the light shown on who they're truly designed to be that I'm never going to stop talking about it. And honestly, too, Tara, the one other thing I would quickly say, and I love you for this so much, is the ability to step into this it can feel a little, it's unknown, right? When something's unknown, it can feel scary. And so our ability to tangibly embody that as we're allowing our heart and our mind to catch up, we can do through external fun things such as beautiful dresses, right? I told you at the beginning, I have your Frenchy dress on. Lingerie, I very intentionally for today put on a fun little rhinestone bra strap underneath. And then this I've talked about elsewhere represents my grandfather to me. So finding ways that even in the way you physically show up in the world as the merger of purity, sensuality, power, that divine combination is one of, I think, the easiest ways to step into recognizing this as your identity.
I love that you brought that forward because we didn't really talk about that, right? Really allowing the physical expression to
Yes.
be one that you enjoy and that you celebrate. And I love the cross and the Frenchy dress and like the whole thing. You're rocking it. You're rocking every piece. You know, I wanted to, in the time we had together, as I was sitting here just feeling into you and everything that we've shared thus far in this lifetime, I wanted to hear from you. Like, what's your next version of your beautiful soul led life, Jackie? Like, this is
Mm,
a beautiful soul led life podcast. You've already moved through so much in your life, and just gifting us together a really sacred moment of pouring into this vortex of spirituality and sexuality as that union of physicality and
mm,
spirituality. Like, is there anything that
mm.
you would like to pour into this space, to claim, to honor, to be vulnerable with yourself of like, okay, God, bring it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, I feel my current understanding is that being called to teach this requires, and I to some extent enjoy and delight in, even being more visible with this topic than a lot of women, even though they decide to heal this part of themselves, feel a need to do, right? So I'm advertising, my face next to the word sex and intimacy. It's a whole thing when you're doing that on the internet, trust. And my highest priority and what I am open to and invite God to escort me into in a beautiful and gentle way at the highest level possible is to both allow the birthing and the growing of the message and my own life blossoming in the fullest enjoyment of it as well. And what I mean by that is, I know that you and I are both in the entrepreneur space, and so many women, very much like what you were saying earlier, will grow a beautiful business and brand, and it starts to take off with so much momentum that they don't have as much time to enjoy the life that they want to have and really soak in and embody that energy that then makes their work fully authentic. And not saying anyone's inauthentic, but it comes from a deep, grounded, like, I love my life and you can tell kind of space. So I'm looking forward to allowing myself to continue to live between the US and France and create a beautiful family, even larger than the one I've already created, and have all of the romance, all of the sex, all of the peace and restfulness and decadence of those sensory moments where you are so on the earth and so connected with God and those you love at the same time, while this message, even more so because I am so intentionally embodying that energy myself, is reaching more and more women all over the world.
Yes, 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 100% yes, 100% yes. And I so recognize and resonate with what it is you're saying inside of the context of when our businesses really start to grow.
Yep.
It's so tempting to reprioritize what actually opened up the flow of our
In the
business.
first place.
And everyone's going to be different,
Mhm.
right? I know that we go through different life phases and different life stages. And I feel like part of what you're sharing that is so important for everyone to hear is really to honor the stage you're in
Yep.
and really allow that which pleases you to be true. And that is sometimes this race for the external idea of what success is actually really limiting, really,
Yeah.
really limiting. And I think to bring it full circle to everything we've been speaking about, that continued honoring inside of the bedroom really does support the clarification of what pleases us and what
Yes.
really is turning us on in life in general, and being willing
100%.
to, you know, to really go in the direction that's true.
Yes. And to create a new direction if that
Yes.
direction hasn't been created before, right? I mean, we barely tapped on it really, but this is creation energy. Like the
Yes.
bedroom is the centerpiece of creation energy. And I find that women, if I can just say it, women who are sexually satisfied have more confidence running their business the way
Yeah.
they want to run their business
Yeah.
instead of feeling like, well, this is what everyone else is doing, or this is the model to follow, this is the design. And I think it's that permission piece, right? I give myself permission to know my own power, to experience like my own worth,
Mm.
completely disconnected from any other external signs or affirmations of it, and go my own path. And I think that when you're just so satisfied in this area and so empowered and so in touch with the divine and the animal of it,
Mm.
you just do what you want. And that creation energy is something that then generally people are like, how are
Yeah.
you doing this? How is this working for you? What is this thing? Is this the new model that everybody should be doing? And it's really about, no, it's about tapping into this divine creative vortex within us and then trusting God to take us on the journey that is our specific design.
Amen. Amen, Jackie. Oh my gosh, so good. All right, so we've just like scratched the surface together. So for all the women listening that really want to go deeper with you, where can they find you? Where do they go? Where do they start? Tell us all the things.
Absolutely. So, my overview of my views on femininity I have in my book, which is called The Bombshell Manifesto. You can find it at bombshellmanifesto.com. But a lot of women do come to me specifically for the intimacy piece. And I teach that regularly. So, my next challenge will be not sure when, but it's coming. We just finished one. And you're welcome to join the waitlist for that at sexappealwithsoul.com.
Beautiful. So we'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes for everybody to find you there. And Jackie, again, just from my heart, thank you for the courage. Thank you for the boldness. And really, I do see you as such a gorgeous embodiment of the innocence and the edge, and your depth of God and your commitment and devotional to that conversation always inspires me. It really does, and it always touches me deeply. So thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for really who you are. Who you are. Because to me, it's like I could also say what you do and all that, but it's really who you are because everything comes after that.
Amen.
So thank you. I love you so much.
Oh, thank you so much, Tara. And you know I adore you too. I deeply appreciate those words. Thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Mwah!
Indeed.
Thank you so much. Merci, merci for listening to the Beautiful Soul Led Life podcast. I would love if this message served you, that you support it and share it with other women who might benefit from really having their lives in balance with their femtypes. And if you can leave a comment, do a review. I love reading every single one of them. And I would adore if you could take a snapshot of yourself wherever you listen to this episode and post it on social media. My Instagram is elegantfemme1, and I'd love to see you, share you, and just celebrate with you as you are moving into creating, experiencing, and claiming your own beautiful soul-led life.